Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pro Wrestling World Talks with Dan and Mac.
Oh boy. Oh, what a week. What a week. Hello, everybody. Dan Burke here with you on Pro Wrestling World Talks here on YouTube, under Diamond Podcasting Productions, Apple, and of course, Spotify under PWW Talks. And I am, of course, joined by my bestie for over 20 years and also the co-host of this program, Mac. Mac, thanks for coming on again.
What's up? What's going on?
Up? Well, a lot this week, it seems like. The major story seems to be what is going on. What seems to be going on right now in Oakland is they have just lost their Major League Baseball team. And I was cleaning earlier this week, and lo and behold, I did
There
find
it
my
is.
Oakland A's hat.
There it is. Yep.
I am not going to move my headphones, but yes, the Oakland A's no longer a team in Oakland. They are leaving the Coliseum. They headed to Sacramento, where they're going to be playing in a minor league stadium for the next few years. That's how bad the relationship is between the city of Oakland and the owner of the A's currently, who's just really come off of this thing like a complete jackass. Like complete and utter jackass. And now the franchise that has won 4 world championships, including 3 in the 1970s between 72, 73, and 74, with stars like Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, and then, of course, the 80s, you had Ricky Henderson and Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco, Dave Stewart, Terry Pendleton, and Dennis Eckersley, a litany of talent, especially ones that loved killing the Boston Red Sox in the 1988 and 1990 American League Championship Series, as they won 8 consecutive games against Boston, sweeping them both times. So the A's are no longer a thing in the city of Oakland. After this current baseball season, they played their last game in the Coliseum yesterday. What else has been going on this week in the world of professional wrestling? The big buzz has been the tremendous produced, I guess you could would some call it a vignette, or I guess you could say it's a promo.
I call it cinema, is what I call
Yes.
it. Because it really was wrestling cinema on display.
I feel like that, and of course, it's starting to trickle out of who was behind it. And of course, it was, I immediately said Paul's fingerprints are all over this, and more. I'm talking about Paul Heyman. And also Jeremy Borash, I guess, was also involved in this. It was one of the most unbelievable segments that the company has ever produced in recent memory. It really was built as a scene from a movie. It had the framing and the idea of it. If anybody's ever seen the movie Heat between Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, there's a scene in the diner where both of them get together, and it's the first time that the significance of that scene. Number one, it's also about the two characters, right, that are with Neil McCauley and then Vincent Hanna. They're trying to feel each other out because you have a master thief and one of the best cops ever possible. And they're just trying to kind of figure this out. And the way that they got at the end of it was, if we were in different lines of work, we'd probably be friends. And that's the way that you can conceive this promo was. It was, if we were in a different line of work, we could be friends. Especially considering the last line when Roman Reigns says, "You're in my way." And I'm not just talking figuratively, I'm talking about in life. And that's really the end cap of all of this. 2 enemies, 2 rivals are now going to have to get together and fight a common enemy with a new bloodline. or this is a complete schmoz by Roman Reigns to get back at Cody, where now everything that's been done the last few months has been him and his way of being able to insert himself back in the championship picture and also control the bloodline again. Because I have seen something like this before, where two rivals have to get together and fight a common enemy. Happened in ECW in 1998 between Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow was a former member of the Triple Threat with Chris Candido and Shane Douglas, and they had been targeting him ever since Shane Douglas won the title back from Bam Bam at November to Remember 1997. So the next pay-per-view was in March, but in that time, they built a storyline of Bam Bam as being targeted by Shane Douglas and Candido. Taz believes he can beat Shane because he did the previous June at WrestlePalooza 97, winning the television championship from Shane. He beat him in like 90 seconds. So Shane, of course, wins the world championship. Taz wants the world title. So that storyline now is built in. And now you have a common enemy with Bam Bam, because Bam Bam now is like former member. He knows the ins and outs. So Taz tells him and makes an uneasy alliance. They have the tag team match at the ECW arena. Taz at one point completely cleans house, completely manhandles Candido and Douglas. And while Taz is taunting Shane Douglas and showing him and holding up the TV championship and talking about that this is ranked higher than you, I'm better than you, he puts the title down, gets on the top rope, doing some more taunting. In the process, Bam Bam picks up the belt and completely drills Taz when Taz comes down and turns around. It was a complete schmoz. Bam Bam was still in the triple threat. It was all a ploy to get to Taz. So, all this, keep in mind, was in ECW. And who was the mastermind and the booker of ECW in 1998? It was Paul Heyman. So this idea and this concept is something I don't think that's far off the page. Could I see at Bad Blood Roman Reigns turning against Cody Rhodes, and it's a whole deal to just get the bloodline to be a stronger force? I could. There's a distinct possibility that could happen. There's also a distinct possibility that nothing happens. They go, they win, and the end they just stare off at each other and they live to fight another day. That's probably the more logical and probably the way that they're going to go for this event and for this match. However, there's still that seed of doubt. There's still that seed of, I've seen this before. You know, it's that moment in Back to the Future where Marty's watching the Honeymooners in 1955. I've seen this before. This is a rerun. If you're knowledgeable as a wrestling fan, anytime that two bitter rivals get together as a tag team, I could go back to Ole Anderson and Dusty Rhodes back in the early 80s. And then Ole, it was like after a year and a half, Ole finally turned on Dusty. It happened in 1995. Sting and Ric Flair. Ric Flair was on the outs with members of the New Horsemen that Arn Anderson was trying to put together. And I think it was Arn and Brian Pillman. So going into Halloween Havoc 95, Flair asked Sting to be his partner. And Sting knew in the back of his mind, he's like, he's going to screw me. I know he is, but I'm going to do it anyways. And he goes into the match. real hot tag. Place goes completely apeshit crazy. Like, they're going nuts when they tag Flair, and Flair immediately turns on Sting, and everybody's all pissed off. They're just like, are you fucking kidding me? Especially it was in Detroit. It was a Flair hotbed. And they were all pissed off because they were just like, of course he does, of course. And that got the Horsemen going again. I mean, that late 95, you can argue that the late 95, the 99 run for the Horsemen wasn't as good as the 80s, but it still was up there. And that was kind of the jumping off point of that whole concept. Now, here we are, another faction having issues with the former leader, that former leader now having to go, or not to go, but more or less to kind of make this uneasy alliance with somebody that's still having issues with that same alliance after all this time. So the seed of doubt is there. It's built in. I think if you're an educated wrestling fan enough, that this whole concept idea that I have floated out there has crossed your mind at one time or another in the past week. That Roman Reigns is going to completely destroy Cody Rhodes and reclaim the throne as the bloodline. This whole thing has just been a giant smodge to get at Cody Rhodes. I could see that logically happening.
I don't.
I understand.
No, I mean, listen, you're trying to play devil's advocate, and I respect that, but I just personally I don't see it. Do I see it coming eventually? 1,000,000%, 1,000%. I think you'd be foolish to say it's not coming at all, but I just don't think it's going to happen at Bad Blood because you can stretch this out a while. At the very least, you could stretch it out for the better part of 2 months because Survivor Series is coming in November, late November. You have all of October at this point because Bad Blood is next weekend. So, like I said, better part of 2 months to build up this story. And listen, maybe Cody could be on, OTC team of Survivor Series, because I'd be shocked if they don't do it in Survivor Series as well in War Games. Have an OG, OTC Bloodline team versus the new Bloodline team. And I think that is one way to go. I think maybe part of the issue is then you have 2 months where you have Cody not defending his title at a PLE. But, I mean, listen, after the last couple of years, we didn't have Roman defending. They can
get away with that. They can get away with that now.
Exactly. We've had that happen for the last couple of years of Roman's reign,
We've been used to this for the last decade since the Brock reign. They were champions going to take a couple months off.
Okay. All right, fine.
Yeah, we're used to this. It's fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you could make the argument that that's the way to go, is to have them compete at Survivor Series in War Games on the same team. And then they're celebrating their win at the end, puts the Ulafala back on, he's raising Cody's hand with his own, and then just swings him around and clotheslines.
Oh, God. I mean, these are all conceivable solutions to this whole thing because I really can't.
I don't know. No, I was just gonna say I just can't imagine them doing it right away.
Yeah,
you just made this huge cinema masterpiece of a vignette promo, whatever you want to call it. It was a masterpiece. To then turn around a couple weeks later and then just end it right then and there. I think, looking back at some of the stuff that you said, there is one thing that stuck out to me that you didn't mention, which I understand why. But it's a couple years ago, Sami Zayn is in the Bloodline. That was supposed to last a handful of weeks. Mm-hmm. Ends up lasting almost a year. I think it was 6 to 8 months it ended up lasting. I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to last 6 to 8 months. but it was something that worked. So let's keep doing it. And even when it was teased that he's going to turn on Roman or he's going to turn on KO, there was still that aura to it because it was such a well received story. And I don't know what's going to happen with this. But again, you have two of your top guys that have been enemies for the past 2+ years now needing to team together. It could have legs. It could.
Absolutely.
I would wait and see. I'd play it with the caution, and then at least you have 2 months worth of it if you decide to pull the trigger at Survivor Series versus a week and a half of it, which even arguably isn't even that much, or 2.5 weeks, I guess, if you count this week since we're recording on a Thursday or a Friday. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to really sit here and say that I'd be disappointed if it ended right away, because I would be a little bit, but not really. You get it. But I also just think that it wouldn't make sense to do it right away either. But to your point, who the hell knows? Stranger shit has happened in the past, so who the hell knows?
Well, I mean, there's always the Rock factor because
that's true too.
I think it's still a. I think all signs are pointing. It's still like we've been talking about it for 6 months, folks.
Yeah.
Because we're coming into October here, so really, I mean, we're at the halfway point. Like WrestleMania is going to be 6 months away, and so the light is starting to come at the end of the tunnel, where most likely it's going to be Rock, it's going to be Cody. That seems to be the most likely scenario. I think we got the tease the night after Cody won. We even got I think we got the tease a year even before then with some of the attacks and the promos and all that. I think that they were building a 2-year program. The minute that Roman dropped the title, I think everybody kind of figured out, it's probably going to be Cody. It's probably going to be Rock next year. So they're at least now doing something with Cody in the top program, where I have felt like at certain points throughout this whole time that he has been more or less in the background. They've even put some of the things that have gone on with Gunther and members of Judgment Day, the Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan has been kind of pushed more to the forefront. Also everything that has been going on, just had it at the top of my mind, and it's just CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Everything that's been going on with that has seemed to be getting more play and more of a push out there. And as far as kind of putting out more of a social media push, and also more of a people are talking about it. Where Cody's championship reign, and at certain points, again, we've talked about it quite a bit in this program, but it needs to be said again. I feel like now that he is in a meaningful slot, a meaningful program that will lead to him hopefully getting more of some fire behind the championship reign. And I'm not knocking him because I think he's done a hell of a job, but I think that the creative has not really done him a good service. And I feel like now that this is somehow going to put him in much better light than what he has been. And plus, what Cody needs to realize too is something that I tell most of these guys. Sometimes the first championship reign, it's still like a test in the water. Sometimes it's the second one that's a lot better, more acclaimed. Bret Hart's championship reign, 92, 93, it had good moments, but his 94 reign was much better. And Flair will even tell you that too. When he won the NWA championship the first time in 1981, he's like, I didn't have my confidence until I got my second title reign. So if Cody doesn't have a meaningful Like, if he makes it through without losing the title or a hiccup or there, and he makes it through WrestleMania, and he defeats The Rock, it's still a successful championship reign because we got Cody and Rock at WrestleMania, so everybody's going to forget about the other bullshit that happened in the past 11 months before.
Yep.
That's something that people need to realize, that sometimes you need that. It's a book. This whole thing is a book. Cody's talked about it. He needs to finish the story. Right. He finished one book. He needs to finish the next one. Sometimes the sequels are not as good as the first. But at the same time, it's a slow burn. It's a very slow burn. And if you go to a lot of TV shows with season 2s, sometimes they don't pick up till season 3 sometimes season 4. But we're still like with Cody in WWE right now, we're still in season 2. Like we're still in book 2 on this.
It's I don't even know what to say at this point. I feel like we've hashed this out so many times, but I was reading something the other day, and I remember the conversation that you basically just rehashed again, and it's like you have that point of like, oh, okay, well, Cody doesn't have any established talent to face off against. You can make that argument. The match he had with AJ Styles, they were one-offs, but they were great effing matches.
Yes.
Solo, I feel, is definitely a lot more limited. He's not a bad wrestler, but he's not AJ Styles, that's for damn sure. You're not going to put Cody in a program with LA Knight. And one of your premium talent, I would call them, that you kind of mentioned earlier, are on Raw. So, I mean, really, what chance does he have? And it just feels like his story at this point is so intertwined with Roman Reigns that you're kind of like, okay, when's Roman coming back to pick this back up? And I hate to say that in conjunction with Cody's reign, because I think he's a phenomenal champion. It's just he hasn't been given that creative, as you mentioned, to really sit there and shine the way he did in the last 2 years with The Rock, with Seth Rollins, and with Roman Reigns. It's just, he hasn't. And I'm not going to put that on him at all, because that's not his fault. It just kind of sucks as a fan, or for a fan, to kind of turn around and be like, what are you talking about? Cody's not a great champion. He hasn't had great matches. Well, he has. It just, they didn't feel like they meant anything. That's the problem.
Here's something that I don't think many people have brought up. And because I got to look back in history. So in the 80s,
It might, I don't know. It might be 0.
right, Dave? It might be 0.
You said history.
But here's
so.
my point, right? So if I'm looking, and he's had an interesting week. We'll get to him later. The 80s, you had Andre, you had Hogan. Then Hogan got over Andre at WrestleMania 3, all that. So at WrestleMania 4, when they put the belt, there was that rumor that it was going to go to DiBiase and then Hogan was going to take the belt from him. But they said, well, just going to go from babyface to babyface without having Hogan lose and all this. Plus, it's also been rumored, too, that Macho Man was not supposed to get the title. He was supposed to become IC champion, but Honky Tonk Man refused to do the job. There's so many layers to this, but Savage took the title in 88 and business did not go down. And business was still really thriving with Hogan out of that spot. They go into WrestleMania 5 for that big blow off. They do the biggest business that they've ever had as far as the story is concerned, as far as the gate at WrestleMania, and as far as the buy rate. I think it exceeded WrestleMania 3. That's how big the matchup was. We go into the Attitude Era, and we add Austin and Rock. WrestleMania X7. Everybody talks about the the story that went on there, and of course, one of the biggest buy rates in company history, one of the most revered championship matches in company history as well. There was always two megastars at the top of the card that were able to, guys also that really had kind of mainstream appeal, because even though Savage wasn't kind of in the same movie realm that Hogan was, he was still widely regarded to this day as one of the best ever. And you could make the same argument with Hogan and Piper in the 84, 85, 86. Because those guys were both megastars as well, except they really didn't kind of trade for the title, and there was a lot of problems of he doesn't want to lose, neither does he. Shit. There was always kind of like a transfer of power, or there were guys you had at the top of the card. They have not had two guys at the top, or like two guys that have mainstream appeal, both extremely popular, both people care about. They haven't had this in 20 years. Longer. Because, think about it, Rock was pretty much done full time in 2002, 2003-ish. Austin was done with his in-ring career in 2003 as well. Where Cena really kind of had no one as far as mainstream appeal, except for the old guard represented by Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. Batista kind of was a late bloomer in the sense of that he's become more famous probably now in the last decade with Marvel and other things. He's became more famous more as an actor and as a performer than really he was as a wrestler. It's kind of interesting because he really only had a 5 or 6 year run at the top between like 2005, 2010, where Cena, and they also kept those guys separated. Cena was the consistent one that they just stuck out there. And that was it. There really wasn't a transfer up until Reigns kind of just said in 2020, well, and became a mainstream star with the compelling stuff and the ability that he's been able to have the last 4+ years in making not only himself relevant, but WWE again. And in the process, Cody Rhodes has been able to cascade and kind of flow along with Roman and has propelled himself into a top mainstream position and is a beloved champion. Because as the marks will tell you, well, the reign hasn't been that great. Business is still pretty darn good. And considering the fact that Cody is still one of the top merch sellers on Fanatics, and not just wrestling. We are talking about of everybody. NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, soccer, anybody that they are affiliated with, which is a lot of professional athletes. You can get anything you want from some of these guys, autographs, baseball cards, jerseys. Cody Rhodes is up in the upper echelon as far as sellers on Fanatics. That is a ridiculous statement to make. And it not just in the sense of it's ridiculous if I don't believe it. It's ridiculous in the sense of that, number one, I never thought I would see that again in my lifetime, because for so long I thought this industry was still going to be kind of in the back channel of everything. Now, because of, I don't know if it's more lack of everything else kind of sucking, because no one has really been putting out consistently good stuff lately. Where WWE in the last 2 years have been very much improved. much better product. It's like night and day. And maybe people are catching on that train. It's been weird. It's been very weird to kind of still wake up in a world now where professional wrestling is more becoming a mainstream pop culture entity. And it's still maintaining. And Roman Reigns has not gone off to Hollywood yet. He's still giving back to the industry and making appearances, which is and driving again interest. Because everybody wants to see this guy. Everybody wants to. He's got that presence about him now, and this ability. Same thing with Cody, and putting these two guys together. It's almost just like a modern day Mega Powers. Maybe they'll do a set. They'll have something.
I think
like
that's a great analogy,
something.
though. I think it's a great analogy, calling them a modern Mega Powers.
Yes.
I think that's, I don't even know. I just think that's actually a great analogy. You could, make arguments for better ones potentially, but I think it's super important to kind of call that one out because you're right. You have arguably the two biggest talents. If you're not going to say that, then okay, fine. On SmackDown, then whatever. That have been enemies for 2+ years, and then throwing them together. And again, that's why going back to earlier, I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on an immediate. Roman stabs him in the back after the match.
Probably not.
You could just draw this out.
Yeah, I could see this in the next. That would be really cool if they did it inside War Games because of the meaning of it. Because when Ole turned on Dusty, was in a cage.
Yep.
And also when the Horseman broke Dusty's leg, it was inside a cage as well back in Atlanta,
Yep.
in the Omni.
Yep.
So there's all that symbolism. And Cody, like myself, is a massive history buff when it comes to this stuff. So I'm sure that thought process of how this thing is going to be played out, there's some old tricks that I'm sure that he got from old Dust that'll be able to play the story out. That's the thing where people need to realize that Cody right now is going to be playing that playbook. I feel like that as far as his booking and his understanding and his logic is all going to be pages from his dad's playbook littered all around.
Well, the other thing I'll add
fine with.
real quick is War Games is also Dusty's match.
Correct. It is his concept.
Yep.
Which, I mean, that's one of the gifts he's laid on this industry because some of the WCW ones, especially, even though the WWE ones have been great, there's still that part of me that misses that low roof. Like that was such a cool, visual.
I don't miss it, but I didn't hate it either.
Right.
I look at the times and for the time frame of when they had that low roof, I think 100% it fit. Versus now where, with the roof off, they're able to shoot better angles and everything like that, which a lot of people thoroughly enjoy, myself included. I think it's a little bit different.
I think it's different. But also I think the problem is now is that they're doing more flying stuff. They're doing more stuff off the top rope where the low roof, you really can't do that. And also,
yeah, that too.
They don't like, because Hell in a Cell, there's room, right? There's room. You can shoot it better.
Yep.
Where they really never were able to kind of figure out War Games about how shooting it, things of that nature, and especially in WCW, the NWA, it was kind of one thing that, yeah, they'd put a guy in there, but it wouldn't look perfect, especially to the audience, the paying audience. It's more of a television thing with the guy in the unless you play it on the big screen. But
Yeah.
then people are just like 20,000 people are looking at the fucking screen. They're like, why am I watching this for the first 40-minute match? But there is that kind of idea that that could be the where it kind of happens. Like they just build this thing out, they let it kind of, and then all of a sudden, when everybody's just like, "Oh, it's OG! Oh my god! Oh no! They've been working this whole time!" You know, like that whole shock thing, that whole betrayal, all to get to Cody, all to make him mentally. But does that mean that Roman is going to be involved with Rock's plan? Like it's all this stuff. Now that all these questions that are lingering out there, especially now too, we're at the end of September, we're going into October. As of next week, this event is happening next Saturday night, which lands on the 27th anniversary of the original Bad Blood and the first Hell in a Cell match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker.
Yep.
That classic, which also featured the debut of "That's Gotta Be Kane! That's Gotta Be Kane!" So that also plays into the Hell in a Cell match that will be happening as well. That is just that blood feud, which I have a feeling Larry the Dog is going to be getting involved soon, which it's goddamn Drew McIntyre.
They're going to have Dom, in the Shark Tank above, so I'm surprised that Larry is not doing the same thing.
Well, I'd be afraid for Larry to be up in heights.
I would be too, but you know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah. I mean, I did love it with Drew, except he did trigger a lot of people's PTSD because, of course, CM Punk posted a video of Larry running around the ring at Raw, I think before Raw or something. And then Drew posts a video from Futurama of Larry after I get done with you. And it's the video of the dog from that episode waiting for Fry outside the pizza joint. That PTSD for everybody. It's like,
it's messed up.
This guy is such a heel and makes it so like he has mastered this whole thing. This goddamn match is going to be fun to watch. We're going to do a full preview of Bad Blood next week.
Yep.
There are other topics that we did want to talk about, but do we have anything more? Do you have anything more to add on this this Cody and Roman situation?
I thought it was important to discuss it, especially given the actual cinema to that whole vignette promo, everything. It was so incredibly well done. And as you mentioned, Boris was on it, Heyman was on it, obviously Triple H is on it too, but just all around, just so very good. Even the choice of song at the end,
the motorcade, Jesus.
The motorcade, like the way Cody comes in with the white vehicle. I don't remember the car make and model, but still. And as soon as he drops that last line, Roman, with the "You're in my way in life," and the song just picks right up. It just all of it was just so incredibly well done, well scripted in terms of what they had the guys say.
It's a really boring show.
You're a boring show. Don't tell her I said that.
Why are you guys being so boring?
Why?
I don't know.
Why do you think we're being boring?
Because you're quiet.
We're talking. Well, I'm not getting into the lively stuff until a few more minutes. The Netflix documentary of Vince McMahon we were going to talk about.
You sound boring.
Well, thanks.
Sorry, guys, you're boring tonight.
Apparently, we're boring tonight, everybody.
So boring, they're putting me to sleep. I'm going to bed.
You were put to sleep anyways. You know, I
Wait, what's your impersonation of me?
I'm not doing one.
Go.
I'm not doing one.
Uh-huh.
I'm not doing one. I'm not doing it. I don't impersonate you whatsoever. I'm not gonna test that.
Guys, if he does any kind of impersonations of me, they're way out of left field and exaggerated.
I don't make fun of you on here. I don't. I don't.
Oh, just to my face?
Yeah, to your face.
Yeet!
I'm going to bed. Good night, guys.
Good night. I
Bye.
love you. Bye.
Jerk.
Love you.
Because I'm not booked.
Oh man.
Great
Yeah,
cameo.
I,
Apparently we're boring tonight.
Yeah. I think we can move on to the documentary now. Anyway.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, do we want to talk about? Do we want to put that up now, or do we want to go to the Tony Khan stuff next?
I mean,
if there really isn't even much to talk about Tony Khan.
No, I included him because it came out this week on multiple sources that Tony has apparently told AEW talent that there's no more long-term booking. It is week to week.
Yes.
And I don't know how you're running your business week to week, but say la vie. I don't know.
Even Alvarez was shocked. He was
I didn't think it took much for him, but he was shocked as well. You're right.
Alvarez seems to be more, as I've seen clips, because people probably are wondering, they're like, you watch those guys? Yeah, you kind of do.
Once in a while, for me.
You kind of do Alvarez, at least in the last year and a half, is kind of at least starting to relent his biasness.
Correct.
Where he is kind of pushing back a little bit and giving more factual information about AEW, which I'm sure has upset certain people in the company. But or maybe even over at the Observer.
Yep.
Excuse me. But at the same time, Alvarez is even questioning that. Alvarez I've seen a lot of videos of him, especially even not talking to Dave. He could be talking about Vinny to other people there, where he's just going back and forth and just saying, I didn't understand this at all. And I even heard Meltzer was criticizing him this week when AEW, with the signing of MVP and the impending arrivals of Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley, which he even said, he's just like, out of all the free agents, why are you signing guys that kind of
like pushing 50?
Pushing 50. And that's a very logical kind of explanation, I think, from Dave, or a logical question to ask. None of those guys are going to help you. None of them. AJ Styles, from what I understand, his contract, if you throw a ton of money at him, you throw it at Kevin Owens. I don't think any of them are going to help you, because it's not the talent at this point that is holding you back. It is yourself that is holding you back. And that's the perception now from the general public. Considering the fact that last night drew over 700,000 Grand Slam drew over 700,000 this year for ratings. It also just was under 10,000 this year, after it was 11,000 the year before, after it was like 13, 15,000 the year before that, after it was like 25,000 the first year they did it. And they had like 1 million viewers 2 years ago. Last year it was like 8 something, maybe a little even over 9. And then last night was just over 700,000. And I've been saying it. I'm not the only one that's been saying it. It looks like to me they're in a death spiral. And but every week, it's always what's getting pushed is the narrative. The TV deal's coming. October is next week. Their 5th anniversary show, which again, you went against logical explanation because you decided we're going to do Ricochet and Will Ospreay next week. What? Have you not learned anything? And anything that I have said about this company on numerous times. I said when they wanted to do MJF versus CM Punk on their first match on Dynamite, I was like, no, you make people pay for it. Instead, they were just like, oh, they could watch a dog collar match. You can do that on TV. Do the dog collar match on TV. Because then people have a reason to watch. No, they did on pay-per-view. The dog collar match was on pay-per-view.
Didn't they have the strap match between MJF and CM Punk on TV?
I don't know if that was a strap match.
I thought it was.
Maybe. I think there was the. You could be right. I don't know. I can't remember. I plead the fifth. I don't recall. But I felt like that if you needed to do the rematch, you do it on TV. The first match is always on pay-per-view. They did John Moxley and CM Punk on Dynamite, that famous 90-second, 2-minute squash match, which then they did the rematch a week later on pay-per-view. And that I felt like was, okay, this is now where people are going to start to get pissed. And that was, I felt like, when the disconnect started to happen. And then, of course, Brawl Out happened, and then the disconnect really started to happen.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's been a slow, even though I didn't even think you could call it now a slow, it's been a really progressive, rapid decline. And literally you bottomed out with your audience. When they came in the door, they had 1.4 million people watching them. And last week and this week for Grand Slam, they did 700,000, which can only imagine what the 5th anniversary is going to do because you've already hit your ceiling. So is it going to hit 700,000? Is it going to be less? There's apparently the stadium show in Australia that they have set up for February. That's not selling well either. So, but the other thing that I did not expect, well, I kind of expected it, was Tony Khan has made the decision that he is going to tack on time to Rey Fenix's contract, blocking him from going to WWE.
Petty.
Which when you're in the position that he is with all his money and all the talents and a ballooning talent contract, I'm sure Rey Fenix is making in the low or the high 6 or the low 7s.
Right.
So you have to think about at this point, okay, I don't have to pay him. He can come off the books. Now all you're doing is just pissing him off. And also, this is telling guys, hey, if you're here and you're out on injury, you're stuck here. He's going to do the same thing to Kenny Omega if he can. He's going to do the same thing to Adam Cole if he can.
Yep.
All these guys that might want to think about just saying, fuck it, and I'm out of here. They might just walk. But they can't. Because they're just going to get added on because of this. It sets a bad precedent with your talent. A talent in a locker room that is already starting to question things and have been questioning things for you for a fucking while now.
Yep. I don't disagree. It's just, it's stupid. Because, listen, I get it. But, like you said, it's only going to piss him off. Is he going to be one Miro, where he's like, hey, let me actually do this. Let me just, I don't like your creative. I'm just going to sit home. It's basically what he did. So is that what's going to happen here with Rey Fenix? You going to check on the sick time or the injury time or whatever it is, and then turn around and be like, actually, you need to stay for another 6 months to a year because you were injured for that 6 months to a year. It's just gonna piss people off, like you said, and you're not wrong for saying it. It's the absolute truth. And to your point, like, hey, let's say somebody wants out of the contract, whether it be because they're getting older, like Christian, like Adam Copeland, like a bunch of others that they're potentially going to sign, like Shelton Benjamin, like Bobby Lashley. So what's the end game there? And to your point, guys like Adam Cole, guys like MJF, maybe they want to make the jump in the next couple of years when those contracts are up. Are they going to have to deal with the same shit? It's just stupid. And I get it from a perspective, but it just comes across as very, very petty to me.
Another thing that I think that Tony might need to realize is because if he's letting Miro push him around and say, I don't want to do this and all that, if you're bringing in Bobby Lashley, you are bringing in an pretty good MMA fighter. Pretty good. He had a very good, he had a winning record in Strikeforce. He had a very good career there. Didn't win any championships, but it was still pretty successful. A lot better than what CM Punk did in UFC. All I'm saying. I'm not trying to hate on Punk. I'm just stating facts here. Bobby Lashley is going to be in a position in AEW where he might not want to do jobs. He just might not. Which Tony doesn't really have. If Tony doesn't equest to certain other talent and just says, well, I'm not going to book him, and he just pays him, how is he going to be able to book Bobby Lashley coming in? Because Lashley's a former WWE champion, multi-time WWE champion. And again, is a well-known name in the wrestling industry, but also is a name known in the MMA world. So you wonder if he's going to be able to get him in, book him for like 3 months, and then for the next 21 months, we're not going to see Bobby Lashley. He's just going to sit home and collect his paycheck because he doesn't want to do anything creatively. Because that seems to be their MO. They just, we'll pay you. But that is why this company is always going to be stuck in the mud financially, because that is just, to me, asinine. If adding on to the time to Ray Phoenix's contract, not letting Miro out of his contract, because again, it just sets a bad precedent. It sets a bad precedent for your current talent, and it sets a bad precedent for anybody that you're thinking about bringing guys in. Because there is a Kevin Owens out there. There is an AJ Styles supposedly out there. And they're going to want decent compensation. And I know that you're going to give them more than decent compensation, more than they're probably going to be able to give you. And that's the thing. Like, Mercedes Moné, if she was looking at a WAR rating, like in baseball, if we're looking at her WAR rating, like her win above replacement, it'd be in the negatives. It would be in the negatives. You can look at the history and the ratings. You can look at her patterns. Every time that she's on TV, people tune out.
Shut up, bitches.
And that's just not the regular wrestling audience. That's the own audience, which I knew this was going to happen. I said in March, it's going to happen. I said, they are going to turn on her, and they're going to turn on her fast. And I said, it's probably going to start at Double or Nothing, and it's just going to get worse from there. And that's exactly what's gone on. That's exactly what's gone on. Everything that you have tried to do has failed. And you need to be able to sit there now and say, and It's not just in wrestling. It's the fucking Jaguars too.
Ooh,
Like,
man.
not only the Jaguars, but you can look at Fulham. You can look at every single company within sports or entertainment that you guys have involved in. You and your family, you have failed tremendously at. This company has been a failure. The Jaguars have been a failure. Fulham has been a failure. That news network that you guys were running was supposed to be the African American CNN, was a failure. Everything you guys have been involved in, everything you touch, the Khan family has somehow been able to just, like, it's the opposite of King Midas. This billionaire, every thing he turns into, it just turns into shit. Every single thing. The Jaguars fans, the 15 of them that there are, I'm sure we're watching that NFL special that they did on Tony Khan at the NFL draft. And he's wearing the neck brace for a wrestling company that he cares more about than the football team that is run by the same general manager that ran Jim Harbaugh out of San Francisco, who was a shitty drafter there and has done nothing in Jacksonville other than draft Trevor Lawrence, which at the same time has almost ruined this kid's career. It's quite pathetic. It really is. Every week that I watch, every time that I watch this guy on TV or like an interview or something of that nature, I get annoyed. I get annoyed because he is a trust fund baby that is spending money that he never earned a day in his life. He's never really worked hard in his life. He hasn't. It's his dad's money. He's spending it frivolously. If I ran a business for mine, I work with my parents. I work with my parents in a family business. If I lost $500,000 a year, my dad probably would have fired me, let alone fucking $30 million. A complete fraction. $30 million in a year. You lost last year. Actually, it was 35, so let's say 40, right? You lost $40 million last year for this entity. And from what I heard 5 years ago, he's just like, he's got $100 million set aside. I'm like, he's going to go that through quickly. And he's done nothing that. When his payroll is over $100 million, it's probably in the $150 million range. Completely asinine. You're spending like a drunken sailor. Then you had Swerve Strickland going out there today and getting mad because WWE thinks he got an overvalued contract. You did, Swerve. You did. Because they can't upset the pay structure too much because everybody on the WWE side has been fucking drawing. So they need to pay all those guys that are drawing. You're not drawing, but you got big money anyways. But the problem is, Swerve, everybody else that's in that price range, they're lazy. They book their own shit. They don't care. There's a gluttony of it, you know? Like, the ones who know don't care, and the ones who care don't know. That's what I feel like AEW is in that locker room. And it's frustrating because, yes, I know people probably sit there and they're just like, wow, all you've done is root for this company to die off. And no, it's not true. It really isn't. It's just, I know and can tell. And I tell the first year, I'm just like, this guy's not going to do it. Because I just saw him and I saw the way he conducted himself. And I've seen the way he's conducted himself in the last 5 years. I've also seen how he started off clean shaven. And now he's just like, it looks like the Unabomber, for Christ's sake, because he's probably staying up all night writing his TV every fucking night on Ritalin or something, some substance. He's just writing back and forth all these angles because he's going to book 5 hours of television every week, which will probably be 4 hours coming up. Maybe even more. Depends if they sell Shockwave or not. I mean, the problem I have is that it's just, he's a trust fund baby. And he runs this company with zero logic and zero sense. And with this move with Ray Phoenix, it just reminds me of a Vince McMahon move of something he would have done at the tail end, of just adding on to the guy's contract just so he can't work anywhere else. And he's just going to book him into oblivion, or he's just not going to use him at all and just pay him. And that's what he's doing now, because Ray Phoenix doesn't want to be there. Penta doesn't want to be there. Yet you're going to keep him. They can't leave. He just sounds like Chaz Palminteri from fucking Bronx Tale with the bar scene with the bikers. That's pretty much what he's doing right now. It's just like, are you fucking serious?
I can't stand the guy. Is really what it comes down to. I don't know, that sounds like personal. I don't know Tony personally, but the stuff that I see him do, the stuff that I see him book, especially, I have to take those like rosy colored glasses off and be like, what are you doing? There's a video on social media this week of him doing the CEO dance with Mercedes Moné, and I'm just like, dude, why are you doing that?
That was embarrassing.
It was. And not even from the perspective of he's a horrible dancer. Just, dude, you're the owner of the company. You're the CEO. You're the boss. Let's just call it that way for what it's worth. Sorry, Mercedes, but he is. And it's just, you look like an idiot. You look like an idiot. Stay in the back, stay in Gorilla. Write your stuff, run your show, do what you want to do. Don't come into the actual arena in front of everybody else. And, you know, Vince knew when it was Vince's time to go out, he could put on a spectacle. Vince also knew there were times you don't go out there. And, you know, especially looking at the Attitude Era and then going into the Ruthless Aggression area, we saw less and less of Vince as time went on. For good reason. For good reason. He had a great foil.
Quads out.
Yeah, that too, yeah. Wasn't the only reason, but yeah, I guess that was one of them. It's just, you know, with Tony, it's just like, bro, get your butt back in the Gorilla. Just stay there. Don't come out. Before we go on to the Mr. McMahon segment, I do want to ask a question about what happened this week and just get your thoughts on the main event of Raw, where Jey Uso finally won his first singles title. How do you feel about that?
Great moment. You know, when you have an audience that is crying, tears of joy, and really happy, and I saw some videos of just little kids crying. Like it was a really kind of feel good moment. Rikishi needs to shut the fuck up, though. Like he was still complaining about it. It's like, are you serious, dude? Like, they just gave him the IC belt, the same one you had at one point. Like, you won the title one time on like a random SmackDown, for Christ's sake. And you want to sit there, and it's like, at least there was build up to it. Like, they built a program to it. They did it on TV. The IC belt should be defended more on TV. I know everybody's just like, well, it's your pay-per-view moment. The IC belt is meant to be on a championship that you defend on television. It is a mid-card title. Not saying that Jay is a mid-carder, because they have really built that belt up to be meaningful again. With Gunther, Sammy, it's amazing that they kind of ended the Braun title reign this quickly. But at the same time, Jay had so much damn momentum. They didn't do anything in Money in the Bank, so it was just like you kind of had to do something quickly. And had Jay kind of being, instead of Jay not being able to win the big one, he had to finally win a big one. And he did. It was a great moment. I'm happy for Jay. I think they did it well. No matter what Rikishi says, he needs to shut his trap. It's getting annoying. And I also think it's going to start hurting his booking, because they're going to be like, we're not here to appease your dad. Like, sometimes you just need to. He's starting to sound like Rick does with Charlotte, and it bothers me.
He really does. Yeah.
It's like, just stop. Like, they are tremendous talents. They're going to be at the push on their merit, not because of who their dad is. And I feel like that you guys, in the overall sense, are hurting them, because the online people are just going to be like, well, they're only doing it because Rikishi said so. And it's like, no, it's because Uso has fucking merit, guys. You haven't been watching all this time?
Yeah.
No, of course not.
I just, I hate it. It was at the expense of Braun Breaker. That was the only issue that I had with it. But I mean, it was a shock, and it's not a disappointing one by any stretch of the imagination. It's just, when you look at it objectively going into the match, it's like, okay, Braun's probably going to win this. And then the shock upset of Jey Uso winning it, again, just nothing bad, nothing wrong with that. Just shocking.
I thought Joe Tessitore sounded good on the call.
He did. I was shocked.
I didn't hear any comments from you, because you've been critical of Tessitore.
Listen, I'm
still in the wait and see mode. He's still got a PLE to do, I think.
I agree.
Let him get a couple of PLEs under his belt. I think he's because we've had some bad announcers, and it has been a not consistent real kind of lead voice on Raw now for a while. They really haven't been able to find anybody, I think, to kind of, except Michael Cole. And Cole is just like, well, I can't do both. He's getting to that point where it's like, you can't have him on both. And, put him on SmackDown. You have now the ability to get somebody who was the voice of Friday Night Fights on ESPN for years. He was also one of the announcers for Fight Night, I think round 4 and Champions, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
So he's a familiar voice to a lot of people, including myself. So you got to have, I think everybody kind of has to give him time to kind of be able to get his feet wet still. I think he's done his homework. He takes it seriously, which some of those guys, they come over from that world.
I will actually give him credit. On Monday, he called it the West Coast Pop, which I haven't actually heard West Coast Pop be used in God knows how long. And then Wade Barrett used it too, and I was like, holy shit. Joe, you started a movement to bring the West Coast Pop back.
Yeah, I feel like now, that's why I haven't really criticized him, because it's like, I'm still trying to get him, like, you got to give him time. He's coming from a completely different world. I don't think he has the pressure that if Vince was still in charge and Vince was in his ear, he'd be fucked.
God, yeah.
He'd be fucked. I feel like now there's no one in his ear. It's like, we have to let the guy kind of cook. We have to because in a year from now, I don't even know if it'll take a year. 6 months from now, we could be looking at this guy and everybody could be like, I was wrong. And especially, you put him in his first WrestleMania, and the storytelling ability that this guy could have, this ability that he could pull out. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Jim Ross. Not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that I'm willing to give him the chance and the time to kind of develop into being something.
Sure. It's just so far for me, it's not that. I'm gonna give him time, but so far for me, it's I don't know, something about the way he announces it, where like Michael Cole, you can tell he's into it, you can tell he's excited by it, and then there's times like that finish in that main event with Braun Breaker and Jey Uso that you're like, oh, okay, he's into this now. Like, great, that's great.
Yes.
But then, like 5 minutes before that, he's talking so low, and it's like, I just can't do it. It's that constant change of the inflection for me that he's like not sure where he's supposed to land with it.
Ross did the same thing though.
He did, but I don't know.
Joey Styles did the same thing.
Oh my
god! Gorilla occasionally did the same thing. Shivani did the same thing. They've all done it.
I guess it's more noticeable with Test. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I get how it could be more noticeable. I think too why it's more noticeable is because we're being overcritical right now.
I'm not, but
because he's the new kid in town. I know you're not. But at the same time, we're pundits, so it's just like everything. We're looking at it now. We're not trying to be like Meltzer here, right? We don't grade shit with stars and things of that nature.
It might be zero.
Exactly. It might be zero. Everything might be 0 stars because we don't have stars. We don't do them here. We just say if we like something, we don't like something. And I understand though why people are critical on Testator. I get it because it's like we're so used to this. We're so used to that. It's just, but.
Well, I mean, shit, he's already better than Corey Graves on play-by-play.
Oh, God. That's why they needed to make that switch, because they were just like, he can't do it. It's like
he's way better. He's way better color commentator. He really is.
It's going to be funny who they're going to get with Ventura at Saturday night's main event.
Yeah, I don't know. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I was just like, because you would think it would be somebody on the older generation, but like, who do you have left that
was still alive?
Well, that too, yes. I kind of mentioned without saying it that way.
No, well, I know, and I hate to say what everybody else is thinking, but it's just like the only other guy you could get, like the voice that he probably, other than Gorilla, that he was best with, you can't hire. So,
are we going with the person who the documentary was about?
Yes.
Thought so.
It's like, and you can't go get Shivani. Him and Shivani really didn't have great. They had decent chemistry, not great. But and then you could try to get Jim Ross, but him and Jim Ross really also didn't have great chemistry either. That they've kind of said that, but yeah, it's a hard position.
You know what I just thought of that wouldn't work, but I just want to call it out because it's kind of funny. Is Ventura and Karrion Kross? Karrion Kross could just sit there and do the impression the whole time of Jesse. It's like Jesse talking to Jesse. Oh man.
Well, you see, I'm down at the Gulf of Tonga. I'm now in the Baja. I got to live in the Baja because I can't really.
Who is that other guy that does a good impression of him?
Will Sasso.
Will Sasso. Exactly. That's what I was thinking too.
I try. Sure. It's funny when me and John we would have entire conversations sometimes for 20 minutes, and we would just be Jesse Ventura talking to ourselves. Like we would just, and because I think I could do a good impression of him, but I also think I do a terrible impression of him. It's hard because I'm overcritical on anything because I think I have his inflection down sometimes. And then other times it just kind of slips out where I don't have it, where it's like, I ain't got time to bleed. And then you go into, I am a fighter, a Navy SEAL. I was a governor. And I'm ready to talk.
Speaking of these things,
Yes.
I guess we might as well just go right into the conversation about the documentary. So this past Wednesday, depending on when you're listening, watching, whatever, was the release of the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. I don't even know what to say about this, man, because it's like we talked on the pre-show and talked throughout the week about it ever since it came out. It's like, do we watch it? Do we watch a little bit? Do we talk about it? And because you nailed it so many times this week, you're just like, it's the same shit that we already know about.
Yep. I knew what it was going to be. The same people behind this were the same people that did the Andre the Giant documentary on HBO, which I thought it was okay, but a lot of it I was still kind of underwhelmed with. If you want a real definitive biography, you could go on YouTube and watch the A&E one. I feel like that's a much better one than the one you would get from HBO. So the same people that were behind that went behind this Vince thing. I listened to Meltzer this week because he was doing a pretty good, decent victory lap about it because, he was kind of prevalent and well.
It might. I don't know. It might be zero.
I did love the clips that they put together about WrestleMania 3, how everybody's just sitting there, 93,000, and then fucking the last shot is Dave, 78,000. It's like, it was funny. It again, because Dave probably has the right number. For all I know, he does. But for me, it's still 93,000. He can fuck off. Like, who cares? Like, it really, in the end, it's just like,
That was the biggest thing.
that's the thing I have about it. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, that was the same thing last year with AEW. It was just like, who cares? Like, who really gives a shit in the end? Who cares? If they gave a fake number, it's happened numerous times. It's happened numerous times in a lot of different facets, not only sports, but, media, movies. They always fudge the numbers. Who gives a shit?
The tribalists.
Cares?
The tribalists.
Yes. the same people that were investing in him years ago and these subscribers were back then, it was probably like a couple of hundred, maybe a few thousand people. That's all they cared about was that number. A small segment of the population. And we're still talking about it. It's just like, Dave, there's so much other stuff we can talk about. Instead of you having to be the guy with the pin bursting everybody's fucking balloon at the party. It was one of the most, and you've gone on to say it numerous times. You've gone on to say it even on your podcast, even despite the numbers. It was still one of the most monumental moments in the history of professional wrestling as far as business-wise and everything.
Yep.
But you still have to make the point, 78,000. Who cares?
In the grand scheme of whether it be talking about Vince or talking about, All In or whatever else, the numbers are irrelevant. It's how much money you fucking print. That's the biggest thing. It's just like, Vince printed fucking money. What are you doing, Tony? Doesn't seem like it's the same to me.
That's the thing. It's like, that's all that should matter. The business side of it should matter instead of trying to, and I understand as a reporter, you need to come out with facts, but again, we're talking about an industry that literally talks about Andre the Giant being 7'5", even though he was like 7 feet, just over 7 feet. Like they fudge the numbers. That's the industry. It's Jerry Lundegaard from Fargo cooking the books with the pencil, just trying to really dull it in to trying to fudge the books, trying to fudge numbers and cook the books. It's been happening with promoters for ages. At WrestleMania 1, at one point, Gorilla Monsoon said there was more than 25,000 plus in the building for that event. The Garden doesn't hold 25,000 people. They've done it for ages. I'm sure when they had the showdowns at Shea that they overinflated the numbers then. You could probably tell me what they were. You probably know it. You probably have the gate somewhere, probably in your fucking house under the 17 piles of stuff you have. Jesus Christ. I thought I was a pack rat. Then I look at Meltzer's stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm not that bad.
We talked about it before. I had watched those other episodes because I had only seen the first episode as of this morning. This morning, I went through the other episodes as I'm working from home today and every day, basically, at this point. But still, I'm working from home, so I put that on to kind of have it on in the background. And I look up and I see all that stuff, and I'm just like, wow. Dude has a chair probably from the 1950s. The desk is definitely like a 70s, 80s desk. A lot of the other stuff in there, like, Jesus. I'm like, do you do your podcast from that room too, man? Because I didn't see a piece of technology that was made after 1980 in that room at all.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't do it there because he's always like from a couch. He's always from like a couch with a Muhammad Ali poster in the background. Yeah, people are probably just like, how do you know this? It's like, look, because I watch shit. Because either he's talking about business-wise stuff that, of course, he's going to downplay it if it's anything positive to WWE. But also, the bickering sometimes with him and Alvarez is fun. Especially now. We're like an old married couple that have just been sick of each other's shit now for the last 10 years. And they're just being complete assholes to each other in subtle ways. And you're waiting at one point if there's just going to be a complete dissolution of the marriage. And it's just going to be like the War of the Roses where they're both wanting to kill each other. That is a distinct possibility, which is part of the reason why I watch. Plus also some of it's comical. But this whole thing, I went into this. I have not seen any of it. I've seen clips, the major ones, because again, I knew what this was going to be. I was just like, this is not going to be anything that I'm going to really need to watch except for the major stuff that comes from it, which there's a lot of it that's come from it that I'm surprised. There's a lot of it that I'm not surprised in, that I knew exactly what they were going to talk about and exactly the same narrative that he's kind of been pushing for all these years. They did ask him about some things that I didn't think that they were going to have access to ask him, or something that he'd want to discuss, especially about the female ref thing, which that if anything just was one of those things that you're reading and your blood turns cold, and not in a good way, like a sense of just an uneasiness of well, I'm reading between the lines here, because sometimes a guilty person would say that. Sometimes a guilty person wouldn't really think of saying that in that sense without just admitting guilt at the same time. And it was everything that I've learned from this in recent, but also just going back to his past and just sensing certain things that have gone on. When people come up and they're just like, oh, you shocked by, I'm not shocked by any of this. I haven't been shocked by the lawsuit. I haven't been shocked by any of this at all. I haven't been shocked by his attitude about retired people. I haven't, like, none of this is shocking to me. Yeah. I mean, you watched it, so I mean, he can give me more of a, I think, a perspective of it on it than I could, except the fact that most of the wrestling people that I've kind of listened to over the years, a lot of insiders and people also that I've gotten to know through this program, they've all kind of repeated the same narrative that I've had, where if you're a wrestling fan, you know everything. But if you're someone that really doesn't know about the industry, it's fascinating to you. Like, to a casual person, this is, or someone that's been out of the game for a long time, like some of our friends that we saw in group chats today,
Yeah.
or in the last few days, where I kind of had to sit there and kind of say, well, when we were talking about like the clicks curtain call and things like that, where I'm really not, but again, I'm not surprised by a lot of the stuff except a few nuggets. I knew that was going to be kind of like, well, I didn't expect that. And that's kind of what the narrative that I've gotten from a lot of this.
I don't think you're wrong, having watched it. I think some of it, as you kind of said, wasn't a surprise. Like the retired comments, like you mentioned, yeah, and of course, as he's saying that, it shows him at 39 or 38, I should say, excuse me, eating the stunner in the worst way possible. And yeah, like I get it from his perspective, but at the same token, what did you do the last 5-6 years before that, Vince? Practically run the company into the ground in some cases. Get into these high stress situations with the board because you're getting accused of all this extracurricular activity. I'll just say it that way, for reasons. Fucking reasons, no less. But it's just, I don't know. Like, I think that there was nothing overly surprising that I was just like, oh, I didn't know that. It's just, the last episode I felt was telling. And part of the last episode is them kind of rehashing certain things about Vince. And I think they aired some of this potentially to at least Bruce Pritchard, because Bruce, at one point, they asked him, have you watched it? And he's like, yeah. And they were like, what did you think? And he just goes, I think it was a hit piece. And you kind of have to sit there and look at it objectively a little bit. There were parts that were definitely hit pieces to this. There were other parts that not really. Like, the first episode is talking about basically up until his early life, until I believe the steroid scandal. And, there are other things in there, but it talks about his home life, it talks about WrestleMania 1, talks about, I believe, the next one, talks a lot about WrestleMania, of course, throughout, but, that was the primary focus, his early life up until the steroid issues, steroid era, as it were. And, like, I had forgotten that he came from pretty much nothing, because he didn't know his dad when he was, much younger. But that doesn't change my opinion of him. This whole documentary did not change my opinion of him. I think if anything, to Bruce's point, it's a hit piece, and I think if there was any change of opinion, it would be more towards the negative end of the spectrum. I don't think that Vince, sometimes has a disconnect with his persona of Mr. McMahon, and that was also discussed. Some, he said yes, they're not the same person. Other people that they interviewed, which was Stephanie and Triple H and Shane and Undertaker and Shawn Michaels and a lot of other people, like, yeah, he's the same guy. And it's like, well, no shit, he is.
Right.
Like, if you didn't know that already, I get a whole bag of other goods to sell you, because, listen, Is there always going to be that overlap? 100%. Is Mr. McMahon a dialed up version of Vince McMahon? Of course he is. It doesn't change the fact that he's a shitty human being. It just doesn't.
Vince McMahon has provided an entire generation of wrestling fans, plus multi-generations, just shy of half a century of tremendous entertainment, and given us probably some of the most iconic stars, not only in some cases professional wrestling, but also mainstream media. However, I have always felt that that character is the same guy. And in the end, you think about the Trish Stratus incident in the ring with the bark around like a lot of these things now you look back on that I, as a certain age, of course, I thought it was fantastic because I was a certain age at that point. Now I look back on it and I think to myself, that is not a way that you should treat anybody in any medium at all. It's a memorable moment, but it's memorable for the wrong fucking reasons. And that happened a lot. There are a lot of instances now that you look back on with some of the women, and it's like, Jesus Christ. It's there in plain sight. And you hear about the Stephanie storyline that he thought about, and it's just like, oh my God, dude. This is going to, that would have been catastrophic for business. That would have probably got them canceled from multiple networks. But that was his. It's hard to look back on that era with him on television and not, and almost now it's almost like the Chris Benoit thing. It's like, it just makes you uncomfortable. Like if he's in a segment with a woman and they're talking about the Sable thing, which I don't know.
F5.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to get back to certain people.
F5.
That may not know if certain things may or may not have happened. That may be questioning some things now, and will be visiting your house and throwing you out a window. Which, at that point, Brock Lesnar will probably be the most over person, like a top, like he'll be up there as like one of the top human beings ever to exist. If he kills Vince McMahon with an F5 in real life, because he may or may not have had a relationship in with his wife Sable at some point, which I felt like was alluded to in this documentary.
100%.
Which makes sense. It's hard. It's hard to, because do I want to sit there and say that he's a part of some, because yes, this is his kind of world. It's his doing. It's his universe that this man was able to put together and was able to create some iconic moments with some iconic talent. And he did that from years. But you have to look back on it and you have to say that in the end, I hope this is the last time that I have to talk about this man. I hope this is it, at least in great length, because, and at this point, because it's just, at least with him as a human being, as I have to talk about him as a promoter in the history of things, and yeah, I'll do that. But it's not like I'm going to do that with any sense of joy, because I don't like the man. I really have never liked him. I put up with him, but I've never really liked him.
Yeah.
It's like I've never sat there and I've been like, here's the thing with me, right? In 1996, 1997, when they would talk about, because they would mention it on air with the NWO, it's like, if Vince went under then, I don't think I would give a shit, because it would just be like, well, the NWO's here. I would realize a couple of years later that that was a catastrophic moment. But I put up with the McMahons. But I never like accepted it. I was always kind of, I always preferred the NWA style of wrestling in the 80s. I loved Hogan. I loved the talent that they had and presented. But I never liked the style of matches that they kind of, because again, he didn't give a shit about the wrestling side of things. It was all about the entertainment kind of side of things. He was a P.T. Barnum in the sense of that it was just, to him, that was a circus, except the talent was all the animals and the clowns and stuff. Like, for Christ's sake, he even booked a clown at one point. That's this, everything to him, he was just like, I wanted to be a P.T. Barnum in this industry, which he became. As far as promoters is concerned, and as far as longevity, he's better than Don King, better than Bob Abram, like all these guys, because the amount of money that this guy was able to generate revenue-wise, television contracts, pay-per-view money. He was always a consistent draw on pay-per-view, and he was doing that monthly.
Yep.
Even the quarterly pay-per-views were doing ridiculous numbers back then too. But consistent promoter. He should be remembered for that. As far as a human being is concerned, though, I put him in the category of, I don't want to deal with this asshole again. Like,
Yeah.
He's in the category of like a Donald Sterling, a Daniel Snyder, just one of these guys in disgrace of, you have your money, fuck off. Just, I don't want to hear from you again. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you get a blurb, this guy died today. And it's just like, well, anyways, it's just a footnote. I don't want to memorialize him, or I feel like now is the eulogy part of it.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like now is the eulogy. Like, that's it. This is the epilogue. He's done. We don't have to deal with him anymore. There's no chance of him coming back. There's no anything anymore. That ghost and that part is dead. It's never coming back. There's no chance of that now. There's no chance of him being able, it's that song now, just replaying again and again in his head. It's just, there's no chance in hell of him ever coming back. It's done. It's over. Just put a nail in that coffin. That ghost is dead. Freddy's dead. This is it. This is every single one of those last ones of just like the death of this, the resurrect. It's no. He's not coming back. We don't have to worry about it. No one is ever going to want to do business with him again. It's over. We can move on. This industry now can move on. Oh, well, WWE's still in a lawsuit. They're going to sell this fucker. Ain't going to go to trial. Like this will probably, they'll come up with a number just to make it go away.
Probably. It's what he's done in the
Just to
past.
move on. Just to move on. Just to say forget it.
Yep.
Because why fight it? Why bring more attention to something that it's obvious now at this point that something happened there. There's some, what happened to the victims? What happened to the multiple, females that were violated? The stories that I heard of, I've always felt bad, especially now, for Lita because of the live sex celebration and her telling everybody that she was uncomfortable doing that and being told, if you don't do this, you're fired.
Yeah.
And I've always felt terrible for that, for her, because of how much she gave to the industry at that point. She had earned her stripes and earned the right also at that point. She was 5 or 6 years in.
Yeah.
Top star, had earned her right to say, I don't want to do this. And it's just like, we're still playing that card. We're still at that point with her. She hasn't proven her loyalty. She hasn't proven her ability to be able to do, because this last year has not exactly been fucking easy for her, right? Like, this last year, we're pretty much, she's been publicized to be a tramp of the year because of this whole situation with Matt Hardy and Edge. We're going to make it worse for her. Shit like that. Where you just look back on it now and just say, this fucking industry is gross.
Well, especially at that time.
And the fact, too, that it was just like, that's why Laurinaitis was in power for so long, because he was just as a sick fuck, just like Vince. And he just, they got off on each other, and he ruined this industry for as far as talent-wise is concerned. He got rid of Jim Ross, put him in power. And it's just, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense on why shit suffered for so long. Talent sucked. You only pushing certain people. You wonder. You wonder now if any of the top talent that he was, because, Brock was involved. Brock is named in this lawsuit. You talk about some of these guys that they almost have Stockholm syndromes, talking about how great he is. Like, Cena's said some positive, negative thing. And it's just like, we're really at this level. You're really still trying to defend this guy. It's like, people will people won't sit there and think any less of you. You talk shit about them.
Yes, they will. You never know.
Like they still think that this guy's still going to have a thing over their career. Like, oh, he's not going to write me that recommendation letter just so I can get in the Senate next year. What?
Yeah.
You fucking, like, we at that level? You only want a recommendation letter from fucking Vince McMahon? Come on. You still at that, like, really?
I don't know.
Like, that's like
Theory.
going to Harvey Weinstein and trying to see, like, oh, he's going to give me money. Really?
Theory might. You never know.
Yeah.
Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?
Daddy ain't here no more. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, it's hard to disagree. He was a great promoter for a time, but he also became quite a polarizing figure, both, in wrestling and outside of wrestling, to the point of having all these lawsuits, and now with the newest one and all the stuff that came out of that and how it's still kind of ongoing. He's under a federal investigation for it. It's just, I don't know. I just, do I have to recognize what he gave the industry? Yeah, 100%. But once you get past that, he's a shitty human being.
That's it. Like,
really was.
I look at guys. I feel like the most clean cut promoter or at least like person that I could ever sit there and like. There's really not much controversy there, except a bunch of fucking guys that never made it in this industry and or bitter about something because somehow he was in power and things like that. The only one that really has escaped any kind of controversy and just seems like a decent human being in life is Bischoff.
I thought you were gonna say Heyman.
No, because
With him, it was the money, though.
it was the money. That's the thing, and he lied to like he cost a lot of people a lot of money.
Oh, he absolutely did.
Like where it's just like Bischoff, all he did was really cost Time Warner money. So it's like, all right, well,
Did he though?
it's like
I mean, I feel
I'm
like
just,
that's not even on him.
it really isn't. But I'm just saying that like he made a lot of people rich. Like, and it wasn't like he lost the money on his own. He just was spending other people's money. It's like, okay, I just feel like that was kind of more fair because, like, look at Hogan's contract for Christ's sake. God, that guy made it's like, I think he was making like $1 million a month back then.
Probably.
I mean, and that was with signing bonuses. I think in his '98 contract, the second he signed it, they were going to give him a check for $2.5 million. So like, really?
Jesus.
Like right out the gate? All right. But the Vince thing, to me, this is like the epilogue. I feel like this is the end. The end of this chapter where it's just, I'm tired of it. I think because nobody wants to deal with this guy again. Nobody wants to talk about him. I understand at one point too, I wanted this documentary series. Like if anybody's ever seen the kayfabe commentary series with, God damn it, I love the guy too, Sean Oliver. He hosts the Click This podcast with Kevin Nash. But he had this kayfabe commentaries. There's a channel on YouTube, you can find it. We can watch all these, but he used to have timeline on. It would be different years, and he would have different talent or promoters or bookers, and that would be what I would want to do with Vince. And I would just have him talk about a certain year, like let's talk about '84 or like '83 to '84. Maybe I wouldn't bring up the Superfly Snooker thing.
I wouldn't want to sit down with Vince at this point at all, but
And now I wouldn't, but I'm just saying, like, if before all this shit,
yeah, that's true.
Really kind of hit the fan, or if I knew anything at that point, I just went, I don't want to sit with him. But like, I don't want to sit with him now and talk about anything.
Yeah.
Now it's just like you have your money, just go off somewhere and spend it. And the Shane stuff was, that story didn't surprise me in the least with what Paul Heyman said, where it sounded like something out of Succession. Him pretty much just saying, take the knife and just do it. And like that pretty much sealed his fate right there. Like that was, if he didn't even attempt to do that, that he wasn't even going to get like put in line, and then none of his kids got it in the end. And I don't think any of his kids got it in the end, because I think when he made his little hostile takeover, I think the members on the board that voted him out were members of his own family. So
Probably.
that's when, because then you have Stephanie McMahon resigning the literal day that he's back in power. Come on. She knew what was going on. She knew it. She even tried to resign even before the everything kind of hit the fan, and then when he stepped out, she had to step back in, and then he just said, "Well, yeah, I can do this. I can come back," and then he did. That was exactly what he did. He pretty much said, he's like, "I'm not going to sign off on anything. I'm the lead stockholders," because he wanted to get the media rights deal, and then he wanted to make the sale get through, because he didn't want to leave it to his kids now, because they were the ones that wanted him out. So,
Yep.
It all leads to that. Everything that has happened, everything that has led to the Endeavor sale, everything that has led up to now, everything that has led to this documentary, it's all making sense now, and it just wraps everything up in a bow for not only the casual fan, the person that has no idea this. They can sit there and say, "Wow, what a scumbag this guy is." We've all known for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, it puts a closure on this, where it's like, that's over now. We don't have to sit here and be like, again, he deserves recognition, but he does not deserve to be celebrated. He does not deserve to be
Recognition.
held in any high regard.
Yeah, recognition, not admiration.
Yes, he should be recognized, but there should be no admiration towards this man now at all. It's over. Like, that part of it is over. I think any of that is over. And yes, there is always going to be that sliver of gratitude. But it's a sliver. That's it. That is what he deserves now for me. It's a sliver of gratitude. Because everything else now, it's always, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, I've always felt like he's given more harm to this industry than good. With everything that has come to light in the last 2 years, it has been even more negative, because it does damper on the parade. I just love going into the Royal Rumble that weekend. My parents had made sure that my Christmas gift was for me to go to the Royal Rumble in Tampa. And yet and the day before the show, I am having to read this lawsuit and hope my parents do not Google or read the trend of Vince McMahon and then somehow stumble into this lawsuit, and then having to give an explanation on Vince McMahon and his habits.
Oh man. Yeah. It's I don't think I could say it any better than how I said it before. He was a guy that deserves all the recognition in the world, just definitely not admiration, and he is probably will remain one of the most polarizing figures in wrestling. He just will. And it's, you can sit there and spin the yarn about Bischoff and Heyman and Tony Khan and what Triple H has done since it's left, and all those things are a matter of reference for sure, but they're still never going to hit Vince's level, I feel like. And not that that's not a bad thing, knowing what we know now, obviously, but I just think it's so incredibly unfortunate that he made some of the decisions he made. Whether it be, as a promoter or just in general as a human being. It's just really unfortunate.
You wonder with all the money he has, if he's now able to face his grandkids in the same light, because now they're old enough they can Google it.
Well,
That's
I mean, Declan's in college.
Yeah, and like the Triple H's kids, I think, are entering that age too. I think the other Shane kids, they're not too far off. Like these kids now, they're able to read and now observe everything, and it's like this is not how they should find out about their family and about their grandfather. Like it shouldn't.
All right, so here's the layout. Triple H's kids are, looks like, born in 2006, 2008, and 2010.
Okay.
So the youngest one is what, 14 then? If my
14,
math is
yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
All right. And then the oldest one's, old enough for sure. Let's see if I can find Shane's kids real fast. Pretty sure Declan's in college, like I said, though.
Yes, he is.
He's playing college football. It does not tell me much about his personal life. They have 3 sons, that's all it said. But,
Right.
Again, I am assuming that since Declan is in college, that the other kids are probably not that far behind him.
Probably not.
So,
but you have. Oops, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say it's just either way, it's just a situation where, like you said, that is the case. They could read about all this. They could go on Netflix and watch it too. I mean, let's be real. And I think, kind of a bigger part to all this is looking at it a little bit objectively, in the sense that, he didn't leave anybody anything really. He gave it all to TKO. He didn't leave it to Shane. He didn't leave it to Stephanie, like you said before. But to that other extent we're talking about with the grandkids, he didn't leave them anything either.
No, I didn't.
So at what point do you kind of look at it and go, okay, well, Vince is kind of a scumbag anyways?
It literally, it just bothers me that in the end, it doesn't bother me because I just feel like that he's Daniel Day-Lewis and there will be blood. That's what I feel like Vince is in the end. That whole movie was about Vince McMahon. Because at the end, he just looks at everybody. He just looks at the guy. That's what he did for so long. He did it to every promoter. He drank their milkshake. He drank it up. That's how he became and built this place. Look how he buried Vern Gagne. Vern Gagne was successful for 20 years. Maybe the promotion of the 1960s and the 1970s. And he had Hulk Hogan after his father had fired him after the Rocky movie.
Yep.
Huge blunder.
Oh, yeah.
Vince brought him back, and he became one of the biggest pop culture icons of the 1980s. in probably one of the most influential decades in for music, pop culture, anything in human history. And he was a part of that lexicon. Like that is the power that he was able, and just because of the fact also there was the rise in cable television, and then all of a sudden it's just like, let's put these guys on MTV. You had Piper and Hogan to get it, popping everything off. And the industry wouldn't be where it is today without that know-how and that wisdom. Which, yeah, you'll get recognized for that. But at the same time, you have no one anymore. Like you've embarrassed your wife, who was a cabinet member for a president in recent years. You've embarrassed your daughter, who has been an executive and also chairperson and board members of several media companies, who's built up a legitimate reputation in the industry, not only in professional wrestling and WWE, and the fact of also has changed my perspective on her. I always used to think she was the issue. I thought, Triple H was the issue. And lo and behold, it's been you this whole time. The man literally has set his entire world on fire. He has a fractured relationship with his son. I'm sure his daughter wants to drop her namesake, for Christ's sake. She doesn't even want to be a McMahon anymore. She wants to be Levesque. She doesn't even known as you. She wants to be Levesque. And for what, dude? Like, for what? For what in the end? For absolute power?
Yeah, he made a comment. I think it was one of the last episodes, last 1 or 2 episodes, and it was something like, I wish it could be normal, but I have that voice in my head. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, the voice in the head for what? Like, rape women and diddle little boys and like all the other shit that you fucking did? Like, just come on. And I know where he meant it to go, but in the context of who he is and the reason of saying it in general, it's just like, dude, just shut up. Like you said, you can't take anything away from the guy in terms of what he was able to do with the industry in putting Hulk over and capping off what I think most of us would call the golden age of wrestling. That doesn't happen without Vince McMahon. And that can't be understated at all. But to then turn around and say some of the shit that he says and some of the shit that he does, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Why? Do you need, you're married, you have kids, you have all this going for you, you have a very successful and lucrative business, and let's just throw it all away on stupidity. And I think, there is a larger part of, the ego that comes into play for stuff like that. Very successful people think they can get away with a lot of shit. But, looking at all the people that he has harmed in one way or another over the years, it's just really unfortunate that it happened that way.
In recent years, we've had kind of a awakening / karma for a lot of people that have been involved in the foundation of pop culture in our lives for the last 25, 30 plus years. We look at the Harvey Weinsteins, we look at the Diddy now that is currently going on as well, and his current legal situation that he's involved with. We look at the R. Kellys,
Danny Masterson,
and we now look at Vince McMahon, and we look at the people around that could be involved, especially the Diddy thing, because the Diddy thing could be a massive kind of waterfall or dam breaking as far as people that were aware or partook in certain situations that um, are questionable.
Right.
A lot of names are being thrown around. It is very interesting. Everything's been going on with that. It kind of harks back to a few years back with the Jeffrey Epstein situation. But this Diddy thing is going to be kind of an interesting lid kind of lifting situation as far as the music and entertainment industry has been the last quarter century, maybe even longer. And it's the same situation with Vince McMahon with this whole documentary series. Everything is kind of now open and come to light where everybody now can say, and there was a part of me that thought that this whole thing was going to get shelved by Netflix. But, they also invested a lot of time and a lot of energy in this. And I think, too, getting it out there to the public. Because, again, I don't want things out there and released because I think about the industry as a whole and what people look at. I don't want this industry to be seen in a negative light and everybody does what Vince did and every promoter is like what Vince is, because that's not the case. I feel like now with the way that, and I'll say this about Tony Khan, I haven't said many positive things, but I would say this. I don't think Tony would ever be involved in a situation like this whatsoever.
Smoke.
Yes, I 100% agree. Smoke.
I just, the thing with Tony is it's like there's always that running joke about him snorting coke.
Yes.
So, granted it's not the same level of Vince McMahon, but who knows if that story is true about
Could you?
doing lines off hookers or whatever, I guess.
I don't think he would do it. No. Well, he might. I don't know. He's just like involved in a complete situation like Leonardo DiCaprio and Wolf on Wall Street. Which
Yes.
What
yeah.
the fuck is he doing?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we were always trying to avoid it. That's one thing with this whole Vince thing. We were always trying to avoid talking about it because it's not easy.
I think it's, yeah. I mean, listen, we we called him redacted on older episodes of the shoot, especially.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, oh, okay, who's that guy we're talking about? Oh, redacted. We would never even say his name, and then, in the last couple weeks leading up to the documentary, it's kind of hard not to now talk about him.
Right.
But and it's funny. There was a point in the documentary too. So the last thing I'm going to say about it, because I think we've run its course with this conversation. But
we have
the last thing that I remember, and going towards the last episode, is aside from the Kevin Dunn thing, not the Kevin Dunn thing, excuse me, Bruce Pritchett, of watching it, what did you think, etc., is a part where they go to the chair in the studio, in the ring, whatever, that Vince was originally filming in the previous episodes, and it just goes, oh yeah, ever since the allegations came out against Vince McMahon, he stopped doing the interviews. And I would just be like, yeah, no shit. Like, dude's accused of, sex trafficking and rape and among other things, and has a federal inquiry against him because of it. Yeah, I think I'd stop going to interviews for Netflix as well. Just throw that out there, guys.
And my lawyer is pretty much advising me to stop. No shit.
Exactly. But, polarizing figure, like I said, man.
Yeah, I again, hopefully this is it. I'm glad. I hope this is a chapter closer for that whole time period. And now we can kind of move on, and hopefully the victims and female ref thing is just, that's the haunting thing I get from it. That's the thing that kind of lingers. I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, because it's like you're kind of admitting guilt.
It was that in the Ring Boys for
like,
me.
Yeah.
The Ring Boys, he kind of did too.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah.
And even the Sable thing, he was kind of like, oh. Like, he never really said anything after that.
No, it's all this stuff that you're just like, man. And all this trauma that these people have had to deal with. And yeah, I hope Brock gets a hold of them, though. That'd be hysterical. Just like Brock all of a sudden just shows up to his house, throws him out a fucking window with an F5.
Yeah, throws him out with an F5, exactly.
Vince McMahon was killed today by Brock Lesnar. Oh my God.
I think everybody was like, it happened.
No one would, everybody would literally have a GoFundMe page for like his legal defense fee. It would be up to like $40 million. Like everybody would donate, but they'd just be like, we gotta keep Brock Lesnar out. And then the feds, like, they'd have to kind of deal with him. Like, we've been trying to get this asshole for years.
We're just gonna extradite you back to your farm in Canada.
We didn't see anything. All right, you know what? We saw nothing.
Jeez.
It's like, well, how the fuck are you gonna put him in cuffs anyways? Really? I'm not doing it. Literally, like
it's like the cop just throws his cuffs at Brock, be like, here, put these on.
Brock's just like, no.
Okay.
Why? I don't want to. Okay. It's like, I'm not doing shit. I'm not doing this. Fuck you.
It's like that bull and you try to tase him and it just pisses him off. That's Brock.
Boy.
That's Brock.
That's the thing. It's like, so if he doesn't know about it, all of a sudden he hears about this. It's just like, Vince, oh no. Oh no, he knows. Oh no. Brock Lesnar immediately at that point would be on the Mount Rushmore of anything. Like, and the greatest wrestler of all time for the rest of his life, Brock Lesnar, everybody, gets a standing ovation everywhere he goes.
I mean, listen, I think it's hard to sit here and say that Brock didn't know. He married her, for Christ's sake. He's got to know.
He has to at least be let on with the situation. Who knows? I don't know. It's just, again, it's so hard to think about. And it's so hard because it's like, you feel bad. Like, as you grow older now, you just feel bad because, yeah, of course, when we were younger, it's like we see Sable and Tori in a Playboy magazine. It's just like, oh, this is amazing. It's still, if you still have the issues, and occasionally it's like, yeah, it's still right.
Cornbread, damn it.
But you know what I mean. But this whole thing, now you look back on it, it's just like, oh shit, this may have been like problematic for them, like as human beings, as people. Like,
yeah,
we got to think about it that way instead of just being like, oh, take off your top. Like, come on.
Cornbread, damn it, cornbread.
Exactly. Do we have anything else we want to discuss this evening?
I can't think of anything. I think that was about it. It was kind of a slow week.
It was some big things, but also some at times some really kind of slow things where it's just like, it's next week will be a lot bigger because of course Bad Blood I think will be a really good show.
Yep.
So we'll be wanting to talk about that. So for the next few weeks that'll be a good build up with that. And then who knows what else, if there's more blowback with this Vince thing. So because that's still kind of early and there's still more stuff that's kind of coming out with that. So
yep. No, I definitely agree. And yeah, next week, definitely check in as we'll do the Bad Blood preview. And hopefully by then we'll know if it's Naomi or Bailey against Nia Jax as well.
Right.
But no, that's it for me.
Well, on behalf of everybody here at PWW Talks, myself and Mac, and also everybody at Pro Wrestling World on Facebook, you can also catch us out on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts under Pro Wrestling World, under PWW Talks. And also find us on YouTube under Diamond Podcasting Productions. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight or wherever, what time you're listening. And we'll be back again next week to preview WWE Bad Blood and talk about whatever else is going on. So long. Have a great week, everybody.